You and nearly everyone you know probably got COVID at some point or another. Some people got mild cases, some got severe cases. But there are things you probably never learned about how it affected your brain. Hi, my name is Jonathan from Memories, and I teach people about olfactory health and how your sense of smell, brain health, and memory are all related. In this video, I'm going to be going over some research findings that were published in the UK. I don't recall hearing about this kind of stuff in any public health forums, and it's information everyone deserves to have and should know about. And so for reference, the study was published in 2022, and I'll put a description down below. It is publicly accessible, and so you can look it up for yourself and read the whole thing. So first, I like to acknowledge that our sense of smell is the least studied and understood of the senses, and there are historical reasons for this. I believe I've gone over them in another video. But with COVID and lots of people around the world suddenly losing their sense of smell, it brought smell to the forefront and was on a lot more people's minds than usual. So a lot of people experienced what was known as long COVID. This is when something like their sense of smell didn't come back fully for several months at a time. But this UK Biobank study doesn't just focus on people who lost their sense of smell or who even had a serious case of COVID. And so, to outline what this study is, in the UK there are people who have volunteered to just have their brains scanned periodically. This gives scientists some data on the population at large. This carried on through when there was COVID going around. And so this study that was published had 400 cases of people who between one brain scan and another experienced getting COVID. There are a couple notable things about the people they're discussing in this study. One is that, by and large, the people had mild cases of COVID. So anyone who may have had a more serious case, you could take these results and boost them way up. The other thing worth noting is the time between when people in this study got COVID and when they had their brain scanned that second time was on average 140 days. So these were people with mild cases of COVID who had long since recovered from the illness. With that being said, there were disturbing things that showed up when they had their brains scanned long after being better from mild COVID. For some of this, just to get it accurate, I'm going to read it right off of the study. The title itself is SARS-CoV-2 is associated with changes in brain structure. So some of the significant longitudinal effects when comparing the two groups included. And so here are longitudinal means, this was well after the fact, and they're comparing the 401 people who had COVID versus the rest of the people that were getting their brains scanned who didn't. The ones who got COVID showed a greater reduction in gray matter thickness and tissue contrast in the orbitofrontal cortex and perihippocampal gyrus. So there was a reduction in thickness of brain matter. 2. Greater changes in markers of tissue damage in regions that are functionally connected to the primary olfactory cortex. So parts of the olfactory cortex were still damaged. And 3. A greater reduction in global brain size in the SARS-CoV-2 cases. The participants who were infected with SARS-CoV-2 also showed on average a greater cognitive decline between the two time points. This study, like many, raises more questions than answers, but it does, to my mind, raise a lot of alarm bells. And so as part of their conclusions, the study authors say that what they observed in people's brains seems to raise the possibility that longer-term consequences of SARS-CoV-2 infection might in time contribute to Alzheimer's disease or other forms of dementia. And remember, this is just one strain of COVID over one period of time. And for many of us, we might have had seasonal COVID or might still be getting it as there are new mutations over and over and over again. Damage to the olfactory system and the limbic region could have long-term consequences that we're only going to find out about decades from now. What I find compelling is that most of the regions damaged in these brain scans are also the ones that are benefited by olfactory training. And olfactory training is the #1 prescribed intervention for a person who has lost their sense of smell from COVID or other sinus infections. In my ongoing bid to raise awareness of all of the benefits around olfactory training, it's another thing to not have learned about it at all during all of this SARS-CoV-2 business. Considering how many people were losing their sense of smell and how now researchers know about damage to key brain areas involved in smelling, I really can't understand why I only started learning about this when I started reading the scientific literature myself. But with all of the unknowns, with all the uncertainties, the one thing that I am clear on is that olfactory training is a beneficial, simple, safe practice, It's an impactful way to recover your brain and the olfactory region following a sinus infection like COVID-2 or otherwise. And in another video, I'll go over some of the conclusions researchers are finding where they suggest that olfactory training could build up brain resilience and cognitive reserve. These are exciting areas, and the best thing is how easy and inexpensive it is to use this information yourself. If you'd like to learn more, I'm posting videos on all sorts of things related to olfactory health. You can shoot me an email, I love questions, and we'll see you in the next video.